Chapter 1: The Quiet Floor. I was 19 when I took my first night shift job at a nursing home on the edge of town. Night shifts paid better, and I needed the money. Everyone warned me they were different, but I thought they were being dramatic. At 2:14 a.m., the motion detector on the third floor lit up on my monitor. The third floor was supposed to be empty. No residents, no staff, just a locked storage room and an old abandoned ward. It wasn't a place anyone should have been. I grabbed my flashlight and headed upstairs. The hallway was dim, silent, and cold enough that I could see my breath. The motion light flickered overhead as if struggling to stay alive. Halfway down the corridor, I felt something warm and damp brush my neck, like a breath. I spun around. Nothing. But the door to the old ward, sealed for years, was open a few inches. Chapter 2: The Abandoned Ward. I pushed the door open. A stale, heavy smell rolled out, the scent of dust and forgotten things. My flashlight beam swept across empty metal bed frames, cracked tiles, and a wheelchair leaning against the wall, one wheel turned inward as though someone had left it there mid-conversation. The silence was so deep, it felt alive. Then I heard it. A soft, dragging shuffle somewhere behind me. I turned instantly, light slicing the darkness. No one was there. But the wheelchair. It now stood in the center of the room. My pulse hammered. I reached for my radio. "Sarah, are you there?" I whispered. Static. Then faint, uneven breathing. Not hers. Chapter 3: The Door That Wouldn't Open. I tried to leave. I really did. But as I stepped toward the hallway, the heavy door slammed shut with such force the floor vibrated. I ran to it and shoved it with my shoulder, but it wouldn't budge, as if someone on the other side was holding it closed. My flashlight flickered, then died. The darkness swallowed everything. Behind me, something moved. Slow, deliberate. A rasping whisper drifted through the room. Finally, someone who listens. The air turned icy. I pressed myself against the door and pushed until my muscles shook. I don't know how long I fought, but suddenly, without warning, the door gave way, sending me stumbling into the hallway. The wheezing voice stopped. The radio stopped crackling, and the hallway lights returned to normal. I didn't go back inside. Chapter 4: The Truth in the Morning. When the day shift arrived at 8, I told Sarah everything. She paled. "We don't talk about that floor," she said. 12 years ago, a resident died in that ward. He spent his final months begging night workers to stay with him, said he didn't want to be alone. No one listened. She hesitated before adding, "He was always in a wheelchair, and the motion detector started acting up after he passed." That was my first and last night shift. I never went back. Chapter 5: The Shadow in the Monitor. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined everything. Sleep deprivation, nerves, old buildings make noises, right? But when I came back the next evening to pick up my paycheck, the front desk monitor caught my eye. The third floor motion sensor, the one that should always stay dark, blinked on. 2:14 a.m. Exactly the same time. Except this time, something else appeared. A shape. Not a full figure, more like a blur, a distorted smudge that leaned forward as if peering into the camera. Too tall to be a resident, too still to be a person. No staff had gone upstairs. Before I could speak, Sarah reached over and shut off the feed. "Don't watch that," she whispered. The way she said it, like the camera wasn't showing the floor, but looking back at us. Chapter 6. The Old Report. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the whisper, the frozen voice on the radio, the wheelchair in the center of the room. I needed answers. 2 days later, I returned, on my day off, and went straight to the file room. Old incident reports were stored in dusty boxes against the back wall. I found it in a folder labeled Ward C 2012. A short report, just the paragraph. Resident Paul H. found deceased in room 312 during routine rounds. Signs indicate he died between 2 and 2:20 a.m. Body discovered seated upright in wheelchair facing the hallway. Motion sensor had activated shortly before time of death. A handwritten note at the bottom in different ink. Room cold. Door open. Didn't close it. He wasn't like that when we left him. My stomach twisted. The report was filed by the night worker who quit the same week Paul died. Chapter 7. The Unfinished Request. That evening, I called my former supervisor, Mrs. Hartman, who had worked at the home for decades. She didn't answer. But an hour later, she called back. Her voice was trembling. "You went looking, didn't you? I knew someone would eventually." She paused, breath shaking. "He wasn't a bad man. He was just lonely. He used to ring the bell all night, wanted someone to stay with him." "What about the whisper?" I asked. "I heard him speak." She inhaled sharply. "You shouldn't be hearing anything. He only speaks to people who ignore him." My blood ran cold. "I didn't ignore him," I said. "Yes," she whispered, "you did. The first night, before he died. You were new. You walked past his room when he called out. You didn't know. None of us blame you." I dropped the phone. I didn't remember that. Or maybe I didn't want to remember. Chapter 8. The Return to the Third Floor. Guilt gnawed at me. So did something else, a feeling I couldn't name. I had to go back. I returned that night. I told no one. The building was quiet. Night shift workers stayed on the first floor unless absolutely necessary. The staircase creaked under my steps as I went up. Third floor. Silent. Cold. The motion detector light blinked on the second I stepped out. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching into a darkness that felt almost alive. And from the end of the corridor, the wheelchair rolled slowly into view. No one pushed it. No incline. Just a steady, deliberate glide forward. I felt the air shift behind me, warm and moist, like a breath on the back of my neck. Then the whisper, "Don't leave me. Not again." Chapter 9. Room 312. I wanted to run. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to get out. But the wheelchair kept moving, slow, steady, guiding itself down the hall like it was returning home, toward room 312, toward his room. When it reached the doorway, it stopped, not abruptly, more like a patient gesture, as if waiting for me. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. The room was smaller than I remembered, or maybe it only felt small because the air was so thick, so cold it felt like it pressed against my lungs. My flashlight cut through the darkness and landed on the bed. The sheets were still tucked in, tight and precise. But the pillow was indented, as if someone had been sitting there recently. A sudden wave of nausea hit me. The smell in the room, it wasn't dust. It wasn't disinfectant. It was breath. Old breath. The lingering exhale of someone who had been waiting a very long time. Chapter 10. He Speaks Again. My radio crackled to life. Stay. The voice was broken, like someone trying to speak through a throat that hadn't been used in years. I lifted the radio slowly. "Paul?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The room froze. The air became heavier, like I had just said something forbidden. Then, through the static, clear as if someone were standing right behind me. "Finish what you never did." My skin crawled. Images flashed through my mind. An old man calling out from his room, me walking past on my first shift, exhausted, overwhelmed, not knowing he had needed me. "Tell me what you want," I said. The lights in the hallway flickered. The wheelchair turned to face me. And a second pillow indentation appeared, slowly, as though someone were sitting beside the first, waiting. Chapter 11. What He Wanted. I realized what he was asking. He didn't want help. He didn't want comfort. He wanted someone to sit with him, someone to be there when he left the world, because no one was. Guilt twisted in my stomach. I didn't owe him my life, but I owed him my presence. My legs shook as I walked to the bed. I sat on the edge, next to the dented pillows. The room fell silent, utterly silent. Even my heartbeat sounded muted, like the walls were swallowing the noise. Then the cold began to lift. A warmth, not comforting but relieved, spread across the room. And for a brief moment, I felt a hand rest on top of mine. Light, fragile, and gone in less than a second. The wheelchair slowly rolled back into the corner. The radio went dead, and the room returned to the normal, stale quiet of an empty ward. I stood up. The pillow dents were gone. Chapter 12. The Exit. I didn't run. I walked out calmly, like someone leaving a sick relative's room. Something told me running would have been disrespectful. As I reached the stairwell, I heard a final whisper. Not desperate, not angry, just tired. "Thank you." The lights steadied, the hallway warmed, and the door to the ward gently closed behind me. I didn't look back. Final chapter. The last record. I never returned to the third floor after that night, not because I was afraid, though I was, but because I felt like whatever had kept calling me there was finally silent. The air in the building changed. The lights on the third floor stopped flickering. The motion detector never lit up again at 2:14 a.m. For weeks, night staff whispered about it, about how something felt different, calmer, like attention had finally loosened. But then, a month later, Mrs. Hartman called me. "We found something," she said, her voice trembling. I returned to the nursing home one last time. She took me to the small security office where old backups of the camera feeds were stored. She wouldn't explain, only pointed to a thumb drive lying on the desk. "It's from the night you went up there," she said. "The camera caught something." I sat down and pressed play. The grainy footage showed me walking down the third-floor corridor, flashlight in hand. Behind me, the hallway was empty, still, nothing unusual. Then the camera flickered, and in a single frame, just one, something appeared. A figure, seated in a wheelchair, thin, head tilted slightly, as if listening, watching me walk past. The next frame, gone. I felt my skin crawl, but not from fear, from recognition. Mrs. Hartman spoke softly. "We think he was waiting for someone who heard him." I closed the file. I didn't need to see more. On my way out, I paused at the bottom of the stairs leading up to the third floor. The air was warm now, quiet, peaceful. As I turned to leave the building for the last time, a faint whisper drifted from above, soft, distant, content. Not alone now. The words weren't meant to haunt me. They were a farewell. And for the first time since my first night shift, I walked away without looking back.